Five, four, three, two, one. Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to the Conscious Grounding Podcast with myself, Anthony Manuel, where we're having elevated conversations kept right down to earth. And today, I have the pleasure of being joined by my friend Jakub Szrodt. And for 12 years, Jakub has dove into the worlds of coaching, masterminds, retreats, global conferences, all in his own personal journey to transform the dark place that he found himself in his own life to the place that he's at now, which is a life of abundance, health, vitality, community, and contribution. And he recognizes in his own journey the power and potential that all of these personal development resources have to improve the lives of many, but also recognized that there's a lack of accessibility and a lack of practicality in some of these resources that make it impossible for many people to benefit from them. So his solution to bridge that gap was to build his latest project that he just launched, this big project he's been working on for so long, the Warrior Growth Academy, which is an online platform showcasing a variety of experts teaching subjects in depth in the categories of mental and physical health, exercise, posture and movement, happiness, confidence and motivation, wellness, mindfulness and stress management, relationships and connection, and performance, productivity and focus. So like a really broad spectrum of different topics taught by experts who are very specifically like locked in their field. And then the aim of Warrior Growth Academy is to ensure that each person on the planet has access to all the help and tools that they need to conquer their limitations, to rise and thrive in their own life, to make sure that everyone has the equal opportunity to take that in their own lives. You know, whether or not they choose to take that is another story, but everyone at least is given the opportunity. And I really resonate with that because a lot of the work that I do, a lot of the reasons that I do podcasts and free content, and even do some of the stuff in my own community is like that level of accessibility, that level of conversation, that level of openness to just the opportunity for people to kind of have access to these tools. And so today we're going to talk about your journey, man. Today we're going to talk about you. We're going to talk about what you're up to. We're going to talk about how you came up with this idea, what it took to actually put it together, because it's a big project. You've been, doing it for the last 2 years and it just came out. So first of all, man, thanks for hopping on. I've been stoked to have this conversation with you. And yeah, just welcome to the Conscious Grounding Podcast.
Thank you, Tony. Thank you, man. It's a huge pleasure. And by the way, you need to send me that intro that you wrote because I don't know, man. I've never seen something well presented like this. So big up, and I need it.
This is great because every episode that I've done so far, every person has said that. It's like, oh man, can you send me that intro? I was like, good. It means I'm doing my research right at least.
You got a business right there. You could charge people for
professional podcast intro. Yeah, exactly. Yes. I'll write your bio for you. Exactly. So dude, tell me in your own words what you're up to and like how you kind of came to this project and what it took to pull it together.
Bro, what I'm up to, if I have to say it like, in a simple and straightforward way, is I'm up to bringing simple solutions and effective solutions to the whole world. Because if one thing that I've realized through my personal growth and journey and working with all types of people all across the world in all types of shapes and forms with, individual coaching, conferences, group coaching, masterminds, retreats, whatever, is that it's not accessible and also it's not used by most of the people. So then with time, I realized, just living life, right? Going from place to place and just meeting people, that people were struggling with really simple things, basically. And I think it always brought down. I think everything in life can always be brought down to something simple, and that's the beauty of it. But sometimes we feel there's something complicated out there and it needs to be complicated, or also what people will sell to others will be this complex formula that, they've spent millions of dollars and that's why it's worth $5,000. And, it's a lot of, and that's not only in the personal growth space. I think it's also in business, in marketing. People, sometimes want to complicate things for different reasons. And I'm like, these things are not that complicated, right? Like, it doesn't mean from one day to another your whole life will change. But bottom line, when we talk about success, when we talk about happiness, when we talk about wellness, when we talk about health, these things are brought and can be brought to very simple principles that you don't need to understand and have a PhD in nutrition and health to be healthy. You can just follow a few simple concepts, a few simple tips. And of course, if you want to dive deeper, there's a lot of things to learn about all those different aspects of life, right? But then at the end of the day, it can also be brought down to the most simple things. So if I can come down to also a very clear vision, I have a vision of Warrior Growth Academy being one day kind of the YouTube for personal development. So at that time, AI will be probably at a next level. So also not only my information and our classes, but also even all the information available online. Someone can just go on there and they know that's the spot. And they're like, I'm about to break up with my girlfriend. How should I do this? I am sad today. I don't know why. What should I do? And they just basically get a simple straightaway answer and different resources and also a class or just one lesson that you can follow. That's like my ultimate vision for the future. Again, following the principle of let's make it as simple and accessible as possible for everyone.
There's a lot that you said there that was interesting to me. And I want to just mentally note a few of them. One is the idea that people have access to information and they don't use it. Like, right. So like people will, maybe they don't have the time, they don't have the capacity, they don't have the focus. And I want to talk about how your approach kind of works around that. Cause I also have a background in selling online courses and I know the stats around people who buy online courses and don't actually follow through with them. So I want to like talk to you about how you kind of planned and worked around that. The other things that you mentioned there were this idea that things can be a little bit simple, right? And for most people, it's like they overcomplicate their wellness and they overcomplicate trying to find solutions for the challenges in their life. And they want to have this big, complex, whatever, this sort of firework go off moment. But the reality is if you have a solid foundation and you get the basics right, and if you're a basketball player, what do? You practice layups, you practice free throws over and over and over and over again, right? So the foundations and the basics and allowing yourself to really master the simple solutions in your life seem to be the baseline for most people, right? That seems to be that is sort of like the 80-20 rule where 20% of the inputs produce 80% of the results. You're saying it's like, don't overcomplicate it. Here are some simple solutions for your personal development, for your happiness, for your well-being, for the functioning of your life, for your relationships. What are some of those basic, simple things that people tend to overcomplicate?
I mean, I think first thing that comes to mind is everything. I think, we can talk about health, we can talk about relationships, we can talk about, us as individuals, right? I think I've heard something, I'll come back to my answer to your question, but I've heard something lately that really resonated with me, and that I think it was Mariam Williamson, who's a great teacher of the Course of Miracles. And anyways, this is a whole, program and way of tackling life, let's say. But basically what she said is that about 30 years ago, the average was everyone was fine. Like nobody was talking about nothing, right? Like you can be completely depressed in your mind, but you need to say, especially at work, I'm fine, I'm fine, I'm fine, and then burnout. And then we got to kind of the pendulum on the complete opposite when one of the sudden everyone is digging into past traumas and childhood experiences. And again, now one of the sudden, instead of being just plain and simple, everyone is fine, and now everyone is kind of digging up and almost making up and complicating things that basically make us human, right? Like if you are struggling, or I don't want to say struggling, just like going through the journey of finding love or navigating in your love relationship, it's human that it is not a straightforward line, that there's gonna be some bumps, because that's one of the strongest situations where our true nature comes out. We get triggered, there's emotions involved. It's human. You don't need to always find a reason why, you are like this. I'm not saying this is a bad thing. I'm not saying at all that, analyzing who you are and why you are in a certain way is bad. Not at all. But there's like limits to that. And I mean, in a certain way, you can also go into the abyss of possibilities of why you are messed up and again, overcomplicated. So I think this has been kind of, more and more the trend of like, you need to go through your shadow, you need to do your shadow work, you need to go through all your traumas. Again, not saying this is bad, but if you hear this on and on and on, it feels like it's a never-ending abyss, and that you need, if you want to come out of the water, you need to go to the bottom of the ocean straight ahead. Whereas actually what you want to do is just maybe float on the water, and sometimes you're under the water and sometimes you're outside and you see the sun and the birds, and sometimes you're right under it and you swim with the dolphins. So it doesn't have to be as deep and, as intense as going down to the abyss.
I like this perspective. I'm living in Tulum right now, and I was having a conversation with a friend about like, everyone's very into the sort of shadow work thing. And, a lot of the conversations that I've had on this podcast too has kind of looked at the opposite perspective of like, you have to be able to have capacity to feel the harder emotions. You don't want to bypass things. You do want to be able to look at that stuff. I've been spending a lot of time doing shadow work from a Jungian perspective and like looking at the parts of myself that I've repressed and suppressed. And I've also noticed that you can make that your whole life. Like you said, it's like you have this belief, you don't have to go all the way to the bottom of the ocean, because as it pertains to the unconscious, or as it pertains to, like all the reasons you could go back into your past and find all these variables and like, oh, I'm like this because I had this trauma as a kid and all this stuff, you can get lost in there. Like if you want to spend a whole life deconstructing why you are the way you are based on your past, you could spend your whole future doing that. And I don't think that's necessarily a fruitful thing, right? It's cool to be able to recognize deeper patterns and to challenge unconscious and subconscious beliefs. But it's sort of this funny thing where like, if you look for problems, you'll find them. And if you're constantly looking for problems in yourself, or it's like, you feel it to heal it, and you're constantly in tune with and expressing your emotions, well, all of a sudden your whole life is just emotionality and being overtaken by your moods and being like, oh, I'm just really in my feelings. And people lose out on how valuable compartmentalization can be. And it's like, compartmentalize that, go do your work, go take care of yourself, go have a conversation. Maybe you're not going to feel so shitty if you like go out and like care for yourself and care for other people for a little while. And then, definitely once a week, talk to your therapist and do your dream interpretations and, do the somatic release so it's not in your nervous system anymore. But I love that perspective of like, dude, maybe you're overthinking that a little bit.
Yeah. There's a few books that really resonated and touched me in my life. And one of them, and it's actually two books, but the first one was The Courage to be Disliked. And I think the follow-up of that book is The Courage to be Happy. And it's very interesting because it's a conversation between like a wiser old dude and like a young adult entering the regular life, the career. And it's based a lot on the philosophy, or more psychology, of a psychoanalyst named, I think, Alfred Adler, who was like a friend or even a mentee of Sigmund Freud, but then they split because they had different perceptions and different opinions. And again, psychology is not science, right? And even sometimes in the world today, even science isn't always science, but we're not going to get into that. But, psychology is basically observation of human beings and trying to see patterns and understand and give kind of hypothesis, right? So Freud will say that everything is correlated with our sexual impulse from our childhood. And literally Adler, he basically came down to the opposite, which is, and I'm oversimplifying here, but in the book you can find it a little bit deeper. It's every single day is a new day. The past is completely gone, and you get to decide every single day who you want to be. Like, again, I know this is the extreme, and I think the truth most of the time is always in the middle, but still, I think he has a great point, and especially in this world where you try to go to the abyss, or everything tells you to go deep in the abyss, maybe that's also what you need to practice or hear and be like, listen, today I'm not trying to understand my traumas and patterns. I'm just like, what do I decide? What is best for me at the moment? And that's all that matters. There's the only truth is what I decide right now. That's it. Like, there's nothing, my patterns, my trauma. No, let's forget all of this. So I think that's beautiful because, again, I'm a fan of simplifying things and then finding what works, right? Because,
Mm.
like, at the end of the day, the goal is not to simplify something and just then repeat a technique or a system that actually doesn't work. Like, that would be unlogical. Even if it sounds great on the surface, it's not smart because it doesn't work. But the truth is, at the end of the day, whatever we believe in a way is true, right? Like, if someone believes that they channel information from aliens and that's what helps them function in this human world and that's what helps them be happy and fulfilled and successful, well, in a way, of course, we can debate on the scientific basis of that, but like, in a way, that's amazing because it works. If it works for you, you compare how you felt a year ago when you believed something else and now you believe something new and you function based on those beliefs. It works. Well, that's amazing, right? So simplifying.
Yeah, I'm really fascinated by this, right? Because there's a couple of things that came to mind here was that contrasting perspective of like, oh, most of our behaviors are rooted in past experiences or childhood traumas or whatever it happens to be, and that influences our unconscious mind and our unconscious directs our behavior. And then this other perspective of like every day is a new day and you decide to be whatever person you want to be, and it's like that is a message of radical agency, right? And I think that adopting that, like you said, a person's reality is kind of reflective of their beliefs. And also there are unconscious beliefs that people have, and there's also like different levels of like how well do you relate to actual reality. You can have beliefs that are not necessarily fully related to reality, and it can be self-deception in some ways. But I think like having the perception of like, hey, in every moment, like I have the opportunity to decide and I have agency in my own life, and as a conscious being, like I have. So it's sort of interesting. It's almost like a radical claiming of free will and individualism, and then even the identity, the sense of identity is kind of like more in the moment to moment decisions that a person makes versus, looking at your behavior as this confluence of influences from the past or nervous system states. I'm really fascinated by like somatics and the body and like how the body stores different information and how a lot of the drives in our body motivate our behaviors, right? Like even not even talking about from like a perspective of like you had a traumatic experience and your nervous system's all like jittery, but like even thinking about biological drives, like how much of our behaviors are motivated by we're hungry, we're thirsty, we're sleepy, we're horny. Like, we do these things that those motivate our decisions, they motivate our behaviors. And so, I'm kind of fascinated by that tension between like radical agency of like who I am day to day is who I decide to be. And then also like acknowledging like what are these other forces that, sort of create a confluence to determine who and what I am. And like you said, I think the answer is definitely somewhere in the middle there. Um, but then the other idea is this idea of like, no, like test what you're doing and see what the outcomes are. Like it's a very outcome driven sort of like you're looking at the results. Biblically, you shall know them by their fruits, right? It's you're paying attention to the fruits of how someone lives and the fruits of how someone expresses themselves and shows up, and that's how you're judging day to day. Like, is this working for me? And I think if people started asking that question a lot more, how's that working for me?
Yeah.
And were honest about the answer, they would really start to kind of adjust their perceptions, beliefs, and behaviors.
Absolutely. Exactly. Like, I mean, of course, like it is an oversimplification because even doing what you want to do today, you have to have a certain level of self-awareness, of consciousness of how you interact in the world, how you feel, what's the result of that, right? Obviously, if you're living in a total delusion or in a way, in whatever, like you have sunglasses given by society and then you hear just do your new person every single day and just do what is good for you. Of course, out of context and with no other tools, it doesn't really function, or at least I think it's not going to work out. But then you just add, a few little practices again of awareness and of kind of enough detachment from yourself and from the situation, at least even at the end of the day, maybe not in the moment when you're going through your day, to realize what did you do today, how you felt, why you did that. And then you add that little dig in, right, session, but it's not a constant session. And also another thing is that I don't know if it's 100% correlated, but a lot of, digging into the abyss happens when people are distressed. And the problem with that is that you cannot clearly feel and analyze and also grow if you are in a state of stress, right? If you are in the survival state, you cannot think in a way of like detachment. And so also that's another element of like, listen, if you are in the season or in a chapter of your life that like things are really hard, well, then maybe at that point you need the simple solution to like oversimplify your life. Just do, if you're unhealthy, just do the things that make you healthy, and that's the only thing that matters. Doesn't matter if you're in a relationship, doesn't matter if you're successful at work or your career. And for 1 month, you just focus on that. And then when you're a little bit more in the good space, then maybe you can dig a little bit to be like, okay, wait, how come I sabotage myself? How come I do these things? And then dig in, but you're in a good spot. You're not distressed. And that's, I think, also a big mistake, that when you get into this, overcomplication and also digging into the abyss, is that maybe you are just trying to find solutions while being kind of underwater without oxygen, right? Or actually my favorite metaphor is the quicksands, meaning like if you are stuck in a quicksand, the only thing that matters is getting out. That's not the time to question yourself. Why did you get there? Did you not follow the map, or you didn't buy the right shoes? It doesn't matter. Just get out, right?
Right.
When you're out, then you can think and analyze. What happened?
Okay, so that makes a lot of sense to me, where it's like the analysis, like basically while you're in the thick of it, that's not the time for analysis. That's not the time to kind of be like, all right, well, if I explore my shadow, like meanwhile you're floundering around and you're smoking cigarettes and you're like struggling in every possible way, and you're like, why did this behavior happen? Like, why am I here? It's like, no, like change your behavior first, like focus on the shifts in behavior. And sometimes, like maybe you have to understand like why you're not changing your behavior. Maybe you have to understand like, what about your environment? Like for me, I'm very iterative in my behavior change. And when you're saying like the reflection piece, like something that's worked really well for me in the past is at the end of the day, like at the beginning of the day, it's like, here's what I intend to do. At the end of the day, it's like, how many of these things did I actually do? And I'm like, okay, I did this. Okay, but I didn't do these 3 things. Why? And so I'm like, okay, well, I kind of got distracted by my phone here, and I kind of like got like really worked up by this conversation. And so I got like I started to overthink, and I got distracted. And so I'm like, okay, well, tomorrow, how am I going to avoid this situation? I'm going to turn my phone off before I work. Okay. I'm going to like, make sure that I have like a good workout so that I'm like physically, like I'm worked up, and so that energy moves through my body. And like, you kind of see from day to day, it's like, what's interrupting me from being in integrity with my intentions day to day, and you iterate through reflection.
Absolutely. Yeah, it only takes, as you explained it, and actually that's a practice that I do. At the end of the day, it only takes literally a few minutes of reflection over your day in a moment that you cannot anymore change the day. Like, even if it was the worst day ever and you just messed everything up, you're like, well, I'm just sitting here, I'm about to go to sleep. What can I learn from this, and what can I do differently tomorrow? That's it. And again, it's a detachment, and it's also a situation of detachment. And yeah, so comes down to simplicity again.
So, I like this. I think this is, in terms of the grounding, the conscious grounding part, I like getting into the weeds of like some of the more nuanced philosophical, like that's where I like really enjoy it. But the grounding piece is like, what are you actually practically doing? How are you bringing that down to earth? How are you ritualizing and enacting and embodying some of these deeper philosophical ideas? And, everything that I'm hearing that you say is like, yo, don't go so deep into the water, man. Like, get up there and swim. Like, get up there and like build a boat and float on top of the water for a while. Like, do some things. Um, from that perspective, man, what were some personal challenges that you went through that you had to transform through that inspired your own personal transformation?
Man, I mean, for sure a lot, and I'm probably not done. But at the same time, I think I've came to, a pretty amazing place. And I think I would give the most credit to to self-awareness. So like, I don't know if that makes sense, but basically I think that's one of the most powerful and impactful kind of skills that I've practiced with time, because self-awareness gives you basically answers to anything that you put your mind or your conscious to. That being said, I would say that, the hardest and the biggest change that I've been through was I didn't realize that for many, many, many years I functioned as a kind of hustler mentality, uh, workaholic, basically. And that was, again, a lot of answers can also come from digging deep, right? So it's good because when you have answers, you have an understanding of why you're like this, right? And even the answer is a hypothesis. I don't think there's like, oh, the only truth. No, it's a correlation. It's you connected the dots with time. So, I didn't go the traditional route, and there was a lot of focus and emphasis in my family to go the traditional route. We're immigrants from a poorer country. Coming to Canada was supposed to be, for the kid, so for me. And basically how at that time, and it's not only because my parents were from another country, but also it's another time, it's another generation, right? So at that time, there's pretty much not on other options than going the traditional route of school and then career, right? So as soon as, I kind of started rebelling in my, in my youth, then I basically quit school or got kicked out from a few, and it just didn't work out. Well, then I wanted to prove to my parents that I could make it without a school degree, right? So I started a business, I started getting gigs and different clients and stuff, and sold the first business. So like, I was basically on a quest of proving to my parents that I can make it in this world without their plan,
Right.
right? And honestly, for the best. Like, I'm super happy with the track that I took. But then it really ingrained in me in like this, it became a part of my personality, even after it wasn't even useful anymore. And that's the thing. It maybe worked for a little bit. I think in the beginning it was the fuel in me, and it gave me that drive. Like my first business, I was waking up 7 days a week at like 1 or 2 a.m. to cook pastries, to deliver them. Like my drive and my motivation was through the roof. I was like, nothing will stop me. I was driving to my place where I kept all the pastries, and when I cooked them, and especially on the weekend, I would drive there. I would see people coming from clubs or bars, and some people drinking on the street, and for them it was still Friday night.
Yeah.
For me, it was like Saturday morning, and I was already a night of sleep from Friday. I was like, yo, you suckers, I'm stronger, I'm here. And I think as much as, it can be a bit destructive, that kind of energy, but still it was the fuel that brought me to that place. But then it became ingrained in me, and then it became literally a part of like my badge of honor. So when people around me were saying like, oh, you work so hard, and I would like work on a Saturday morning, on a Sunday morning, like at all different times when other people would, even after when I sold that business, when I had other projects and other businesses, I would still function from a place I need to show to the world that I am the hardest working dude, to a point that it was destructive, to a
Mm.
point that I didn't function. I wasn't healthy. I wasn't functioning well. And then when I realized that, I'm like, man, I have nothing to prove anymore. Like, neither to my parents, neither to myself, neither to nobody. So I really had to like break down this kind of like badge of honor that I was, holding on my chest or on my back. And that, I would say, really gave me so much more peace in work, because then work became not I need to do it because I want to show it to others or even to myself. At some point at the end, it was even just to myself, but it became like I do the work because it's truly calling me from within,
Mm.
and I am truly passionate about this. And it's okay if I spend a Friday night watching a movie, because before, when I was spending free time, I would feel guilty. So that's
Mm.
also a very destructive thing. It's not just I worked all the time. It's also when I didn't work, I felt guilty. I'm like, look at you, lazy ass, watching a movie at 9 p.m. on a Friday. It's like, bro, you've worked all week. No shit, you can chill a little bit, you know? So I think that was huge, because again, I think the goal at the end of the day, everyone, I think, wants to, I don't know how I will formulate this exactly, but like, function from a place of love.
Mm.
There's probably better or simpler ways to say it, but whatever you do, whether it's your work, whether who you spend time with, whether how you work out, right? Different types of workout. You can go super intense with heavy weights. You can go on the run with people, outside on a sunny day. Like, there's so many different manifestations of all the facets of our life: relationships, work, career, free time. And I think the bottom line, everyone wants to do the things that really come from a good place. And when that happens, that's when you feel at your best and you feel fulfilled. And just like a little example, I know it doesn't say the whole thing, but I'm tracking my sleep with the ring. And bro, I've launched the business. Like right now, for the past month, it is crunch time, right? It's like everything is hitting me. I have 1,000 opportunities and directions I could go. I've never slept better. I mean, no, I had moments in my life where I slept like better, but like my scores are like through the roof. Why? Because I'm in such peace. And that obviously comes with a philosophy of like, the universe got me. I'm in peace. I'm doing my best, and I know this will pay off. But also, it comes from just like having the right patterns and programs within that. It doesn't matter. Like, if I receive bad news, if something doesn't work out, if I'm overthinking something, like those things, at the end of the day, I'm going to bed and I'm in full peace. So I think there's a correlation there, because I have, in a way, all the reasons in the world to be right now stressed out. You know what I mean? Like, not stressed out in a just negative way, just like even being hyper, like being all over the place, running left and right and trying to make this thing work. Like, I'm more in peace as ever.
Mm.
So I think this is the key reason, is because it comes from a place of like peace and love. So basically, what comes out and how I function is really like calm and zen and positive.
Yeah, there's that saying, he who has a strong enough why can bear any how. And so even though you have like a huge
Mhm.
monumental amount of responsibility associated with your project, no problem. Like, yeah, there's problems, but like in terms of the energy behind it, what was fascinating to me was your original motivation of like trying to prove yourself to your parents and to yourself, and then shifting out of that mindset. I think a lot of people don't shift out of that mindset if they catch themselves in it, and they kind of always have that perpetually running in the background. One of the coaches that really influenced me early in my career, a guy named Rich Litvin, talks about how the thing that got you to where you are now is usually the thing that holds you back from getting to the next level. And he used it himself as an example too, where he wanted to prove himself to his dad, and so he worked really, really hard to try and show his dad that, he was good enough and that he was doing his thing. And that gave him a work ethic, and that gave him like this really strong, motivated drive. But it also meant that his work was only valid when it was validated by other people. And so what was holding him back was that need to prove himself, that need to get validation from other people. It held him back from showing up more authentically or showing up as powerfully as he could. And so that thing that was like a motivation and a drive was ultimately his block as well. It was his limitation. And I'm curious for you, like, did you have a gap where you kind of realized it's like, okay, well, I don't need to prove anything to myself or to others now. I have nothing to prove. But did you have that sense of purpose immediately, or was there a period where you're like, well, if I don't have anything to prove, like, what am I doing? Like, what's my purpose? What is my drive? What is my aim?
Absolutely, man. Absolutely. I mean, listen, the in a way, my this project and where I'm at today is basically the journey and all the baby steps throughout. I want to say 12 years because that's where my life really shifted from my past life and where I was heading, but I would also almost include all the other years. So that would make the past 37 years, right? And that's why I say that I think, in an amazing place because still I'm going to grow until the end of my life. But I think the fact that being really truly right now in a position to do a project that really is my calling, my mission, and also be in peace in my life in general with, the programs, the philosophy where I'm standing, that's in a way a comparison to where I was in the past, right? So for sure, basically, I could say that for the 37 past years, it has been a up and down journey that brought me slowly but surely to where I'm at today, right? And what, for example, the classic, what would you tell your 15-year-old self or whatever? I think the things that made some parts of that journey harder was that I thought that I had to have everything figured out, that I had to reach this kind of weird and also hard to explain, but space where you feel at peace and you feel fulfilled and you feel the abundance of life. But at the same time, it's the journey. It's every single moment is a step, and you need to go through that step to reach that certain place, right? And I think at the end of the day, you can feel in a way the peace. I could have felt the peace. I'm going to speak for myself. I could have felt the peace and the abundance that I feel today more. Not that I didn't feel it at all, but I could have felt it more if I realized that at every step, this is literally the thing that is shaping me. I'm not trying to skip no steps. I'm not trying to get with the elevator to the top of the roof. I need to go through the stairs and basically just, welcome it as the journey, right? Like, again, today, from a business perspective, I'm light years away from where I'm going, but I'm in pure peace with where the business is right now. Obviously, we've just launched, so it's kind of normal that we're still like at the baby stage, but still I could, be kind of like, again, stressed or trying to get to the top quicker. But I think this peace can be felt in any stage, right? And another example, I don't know if that makes sense, but actually, no, I know that makes sense. You probably heard and you probably know that we don't really want our goals or the things that we want to buy. We want how it will make us feel, right? Like the house, the car, the vacation that you can go every 2 weeks, you can go to everywhere in the world because you have the financial means. You don't really want the villa in Mexico jungle, even if obviously the idea and the view is incredible. You want how you feel in that moment, right? The freedom, the satisfaction, the power that you're like, hey, tomorrow morning we're going to our villa, right? This is what you truly want. So when I kind of put those things together, and not just by myself, with the help, I've worked with, amazing coaches and mentors in my journey. I'm like, okay, wait. So basically, if in the future I want to feel free, and this is actually one of my, values and ways of life, I want to feel freedom. How does freedom looks today? So then I'm like, well, I can just go on a bike ride on a Wednesday afternoon where technically on my schedule I have stuff to do, and I'll just go on the bike ride. I'll sit down, I'll drink a coffee and just listen to a book or journal with the sun on my face, and then go home and continue work. Like, in a way, I'm already there. The same feeling I will have when I'll hop on a private jet and go to my villa in Tulum, I can have it today. So like, again, why would I feel frustration or any type of negative emotion that I'm not there yet if I can already have it, right? The emotion. So I think that's another like huge lesson that for sure I think can be applied by anyone at any point of your life, because basically it gives you that peace in the moment that you are in the chapter of your life, whatever are the circumstances.
I can imagine the objection that people might have to that. People who have more of like an ambitious feeling where it's like, no, I shouldn't feel the emotion now because I didn't earn it. And it's like, if I do give myself the feeling like I already have these things that I'm going after, then where's my motivation? Like, how am I why would I just stop then? Why wouldn't I just stop working on my goals and just appreciate what I have? And I think that would be like, I can imagine there's probably a past version of me that would make that argument, right? But I'm curious, it's like, what would you say to someone who had that objection?
Absolutely. Number one, if you believe at any level in energy and frequency, and you don't need to be a spiritual woo-woo person, I think there's enough evidence on what vibration you live at. This is what attracts your reality. So if you prefer to be in a lower vibration rather than the higher vibration, if you think this is what's going to attract the success or the happiness or the image, well, that's an opinion, right? But again, there's enough, I think, evidence, or at least that's what I want to believe, that I'd rather be in the right vibration rather than in the bad vibration, quote unquote. Now, on an even more technical, or I most of the time try to bring it to some scientific facts. Not everything can be explained by science, but I try as much as possible. That being said, let's imagine you are on the path, you're super ambitious, you're looking at the private jet and the villa in Tulum. You're like, okay, I have a journey ahead of me. This is not going to happen over time or overnight. Like, as motivated or as aggressive as I am, it's not going to happen over time. Will I be more productive and bring in more results and more success if I'm in a space of enjoying the process and every single moment making the best out of it, in the sense of I'm meeting people, I'm pitching my business. If I'm happy, if I'm in a good mood, will I sell more? Or if I'm more pushy, trying to rush through the door, will you sell more? And again, there's a lot of scientific evidence that, if you are in an aggressive, pushy way, depending probably on the industry, I'm sure someone could point out a certain industry where you gotta be a, dog eat dog mentality. Sure, nothing is universally true or universally false, right? But overall, again, so number one part of the question is the energetic and the manifestation and the attraction. And the number two is even more brought to the basics of the journey being in all cases a journey. And of course, maybe you could argue that if you're going and being not enjoying the time, you maybe will reach there quicker. Maybe, right? Because you're going to be so relentless. You're not going to sleep. You're not going to take care of your mental health, nothing, but you're going to be working 20 hours a day. Sure, maybe you will reach that spot. Then at what cost and what stage and what, state you will be there. Anyways, if we just look at, the surface level, maybe you will reach. But why not have also the enjoyment? Because that's the thing. I'm playing a long-term game. And the thing is, most of the people see just the short term. or
Mm.
at least that mentality would be very short term. It's like, sure, if you go 1 week super intense, you will produce more. But
Mm.
then the second week, you'll probably start to decline because your head, your physical, you're not sleeping, you're not doing anything else, you're not seeing any friend because you're so in a hustler place that nothing unless you're working on your business is important. And then third week, you are even below the average of what you would produce in a week where you also see other people and do other things. So again, 1 week you would have better stats,
Mm.
but very quickly you would even go under the barrier of your average performance.
Right. So the argument is really practical. It's like, no, you want to enjoy it because otherwise you're going to burn out. You're going to like increase your cortisol. It's going to be like a pretty negative experience. You'll kind of spiral and burn out. And I see, I see multiple sides of it, right? Like I've heard certain people talk about how pessimists end up being more successful because they're more realistic about, like the harsh realities of a business, right? And so they'll have more foresight because they're pessimistic, and they'll be able to plan for problems better because they think in terms of problems. And on the other side of that, right, like you said, it's like if you are in a perpetually negative state and you're constantly stressing, then that makes it very, very hard for you to sustain your energy. Like I listen to you talk and I see the animation in your body when you speak, and it's like it's clear to me that you operate from a level of super, super high energy, and that your belief and your conviction and your passion is really what feeds and sustains your capacity to do as much as you do.
Absolutely. And listen, again, if we, for the skeptics or anyone kind of being not so sure about this approach or this philosophy, there's an amazing book. I mean, there's a lot of books, but an amazing book, which is The Happiness Advantage, which literally by research proves and shows how happiness has a bigger impact on success rather than success on happiness.
Mm.
So someone who's like, listen, all I want is the success part. Well, you should prioritize your happiness because that's what's going to bring you more success. And often we kind of reverse those and we're like, oh, I'm going to be happy when I reach success.
Mm.
Therefore, I'm cutting off, all the things that matter less. So like sleep, who got time for that? Friends, who got time for that? Meditation, who got time for that? Personal work, who got time for that? Just success? Well, you're going to reach, basically, that's what the research shows. You reach less success than someone who prioritizes happiness. But again, it doesn't mean 24/7 you just do things that makes you happy. Of course, like, again, there's the pendulum and the truth is somewhere in the middle, but it's just don't forget this on the path to success, or even prioritize it a bit more to have even more success.
Mm. Yeah, I'm fascinated by the idea of happiness being a driver for happiness being this emotion that we can self-generate. We can self-generate happiness by choosing to be grateful. And there is a lot of science behind that in terms of like, train your, like, it's funny because like what people think make them happy is not exactly what makes a person happy. Usually our experience of happiness is we ascribe meaning to certain experience. Like you said, it's like, you want the villain to loom because it means something to you and that meaning is going to make you happy. And oftentimes people will get to the villain to loom and they've spent all this time, like hustling their freaking minds out, constantly stuck in this perpetual state of I'll be happy when, I'll be happy when, I'll be happy when, I'll be happy when. They neurologically condition themselves to be happy in the future, which is to say never happy at all, because they're always delaying happiness. And then they get to the villain to loom and they're thinking, future, 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 because that's the only, they can't even be present to the experience of being in the villa in Tulum.
Yeah.
So happiness is an interesting thing. Like, I don't think it's something that's a worthwhile emotion to chase. Like, I don't think that, pursuing goals because you think it will make you happy is a good idea. I think pursuing goals because they're meaningful to you. So I think meaning over happiness is a more reliable motivator for most people, at least in my own experience and what I've noticed in others. And then, the idea of happiness itself is, I've noticed that happiness is a skill in a lot of ways. Like it's like literally like mental training. Like you mentally train yourself to notice things that you're grateful for and to enjoy things and to shift your perspective. and there's like a physiological component. You train, you move, you eat well, you support your neurophysiology, you don't consume a bunch of attention span depleting media, and then on top of that, you also take care of you do your inner work, right? Maybe not like spend all your time at the bottom of the ocean, but you clear some of the subconscious blocks that make you feel like you don't deserve happiness. And then, you don't need to chase these big, massive goals to give yourself the promise of being happy in the future. You can be content and you can be happy in the moment and you can be grateful for the things in your life. And then from that baseline level of contentment, that's when it would be more appropriate for you to pursue things that are meaningful in your life. And that's when you would have more energy to pursue things that have more meaning, as opposed to like the constant hamster wheel of chasing happiness.
Absolutely. Absolutely. I mean, we could talk, I think, for hours. I love the subject of happiness, and I've also researched and read about this for years. But yeah, absolutely. As you said, it's something that is practiced, because I don't think naturally, especially in our society, that's not something that is put forward. But at the same time, what's interesting is that what's observed by research is that the most happy people are those who don't focus too much on their happiness. So it's not, you don't want to wake up every single day at the end of, like, again, there's different stages in everyone's life and transformation, but bottom line, to reach a certain level of happiness, you don't want to wake up every day and be like, today I'm going to be happy. What makes me happy? Does this make me happy? Does this tea make me happy? Like, you over focus and you over stress over happiness, right? So, but you need to be aware enough to know what situation in life makes you happy. So then you realize what type of people, spending time with them, some make you happy, some don't. And then, like, it's also correlated with their energy, with the subjects you talk about, with what you do, etc. But anyways, I'm not going to dig deeper into the happiness, but I think it's basically the foundation, because that's the end goal of almost everyone, is to live a happy life, right?
Yeah, and I think, like, to one of your earlier points, I think that oftentimes we kind of overcomplicate happiness, and, like, this is something I've struggled with. Like, I've had a lot of mental health challenges in my life. I've had to go through a lot of different, like, personal development waves, and, like, happiness has not necessarily been a default state of mind for a lot of my life, and I'm sort of learning to kind of come to places of peace and contentment. But I do notice that there's that saying that wanting to have a positive experience is a negative experience, or needing to have a positive experience is, like you said, it's like, if you're constantly on the search for things that will make you happy, the default assumption is that you're not. The
Yeah.
default assumption is that, like, oh, like I'm in this, like, I'm in a happiness deficit, and I'm looking outside to this world to fulfill my needs of becoming, like, I need my external world to make me happy, as opposed to doing the inner cultivation and the maybe the perspective shifting of, like, maybe I can just be content. Maybe I can, like, have that be my baseline, and do that work a little bit. And a lot of that is mental training. A lot of that, can be done from different perspectives. But you're right. We could do a whole other podcast on just, what happiness is. How is it cultivated? How is that an experience? Is it appropriate to just, like, have happiness be your North Star for your decisions? Or is it more appropriate to have, challenge and like, friction and difficulty, and to embrace some of the because a lot of the other conversations that I've had have been really interesting, where it's like, the pursuit of happiness as an ultimate ideal has alienated and isolated us from a lot of our other human experience of the other spectrum of emotions.
Yeah.
And like, there's, like, almost like a shame in feeling sadness, or a shame in feeling discontent, or a shame in feeling anything other than good. And so I find that's kind of an interesting balance to kind of strike as well,
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely.
Yeah.
Nothing to
So
add. Nothing to add.
nothing to add. No notes. So,
Point.
dude, I'd love to wrap this conversation up with, like, a little overview of who is the type of person who would really benefit from your Warrior Growth Academy. And, like, if I'm listening to this podcast and I'm kind of curious, like, what's this guy up to? Where would a person have to be to benefit from this? Like, where is a person in their life that they would go to warriorgrowthacademy.com and start taking some of these courses?
It's gonna sound very cheesy, but that's truly what I feel is anyone that wants to level up in whatever life area or needs a little kind of kick or help. So just to give you an example, at the stage of my life where I'm at, I'm not at like, learning a new thing and going deeper. Like I would say, I would self analyze that I am in a relatively good place, but it doesn't mean I don't need a moment of disconnect and relaxation. So most of the classes that I'm doing, like literally on my own platform, are all the meditation, breath work, sound healing, sound bath, because it's a session of like 20-25 minutes where I just put on my headphones and I go through the breathing, and then I feel incredibly relaxed. I go deeper into my subconscious, etc. Right? So I wouldn't say I'm the typical potential client of my platform for some of the classes at this stage of my life, but I'm still a client because there's so many different options, right? That being said, because obviously we need to, have a certain niche or at least a clarity, there is the typical client that I think, not I think, that is the client of Warrior Growth Academy, which is the young professional that is, in the middle kind of the career, they above 25 years old, so mostly between 25 and 35-ish, 40 maybe, and basically they are too busy. They are too busy, but they start to see elements of like, wait, is this what the rest of my life will be, right? Because you have a certain drive when you are in school, you meet new people, you have classes, and then you start work, and then you have new challenges and excitement. But then when you start your career after a few years, you're like, wait, is this the rest of my life? Like working and working, and like I see there's some holes in my life or things that are not so cool. And then you start listening to Jay Shetty podcast, right? You start being a little bit open of like, okay, I think there's a better way, or at least, better ways in different parts of my life. And that's where you take the class of the science of happiness, or how to set goals, or how to be more charismatic, or how to stop procrastination, or how to be less stressed through neuroscience. That's where those classes come in handy, because you have that desire, you have no idea where to start. This is a low ticket. All the classes are for lower than a price of a book. So like, this is a great place that worst case, if it doesn't work, well, I didn't invest, a week of my life to go to a seminar that at the end of the day, I was like, that doesn't work. I didn't invest hundreds or thousands of dollars on a coach or an online full-on class for like 2 months and then be like, man, I don't like the mentor, I don't like the teacher. No, you just started with something simple, quick, and affordable. So obviously this is, the typical clientele, which in a way is most of our society, right? Like most of the people, again, it can benefit anyone. My mom is doing some of the classes. Well, then maybe it's also because like she's my mom and she's like, or she just wants to support. But like, I think it can benefit anyone, but I think the people that it can benefit the most are the professionals, young professionals that are busy and really desire to start changing and improving some elements of their life, or also get out of the quicksand, right? Some of the classes are literally like a toolkit to stop the stress tornado in your brain.
Right. Cool. Right on. So guys, this is the Conscious Grounding Podcast. And if you want to check out more of Jakub's work, well, first of all, I'll post his Instagram and I'll post some of his contact info in the description of this episode, but also go check out warriorgrowthacademy.com. Go check out some of the courses. There's a surprisingly large library of a massive array of different topics that you can go check out. And I know some of the people who put together some of the courses. I actually met one of the girls who did, I think it was the sound healing course out here in Tulum while I was out here. And I was like, that's so cool. Like, you know, the platform is really, really big, and you really went out of your way to gather a great group of people who are doing really, really cool things there. So warriorgrowthacademy.com for those who are looking to check it out. Let me know what you thought of this episode, guys. If you're listening on YouTube, giving it a little thumbs up and a little comment really, really helps the algorithm. If you know someone who has to listen to this episode, maybe because they're too deep in the ocean, or maybe because there's some motivation or inspiration that they need to get, send them that way. That's how we build community, is you send things to your homies that you think they would like. You know, we're trying to build community out here. So go check out warriorgrowthacademy.com. Go check out Jakub's Instagram. Go check out him in general. And let us know what you thought of the episode. Dude, thank you for this conversation today. That was fantastic.
Amazing. Thank you so much, Tony.
And ladies and gentlemen, we'll catch you on the next episode of the Conscious Grounding Podcast. Thank you for listening.
Peace and love.